Hello everybody, Austin Hill Shaw here, founder of Creativity Matters and author of The Shoreline of Wonder on Being Creative. Today we're going to have another episode of Creativity and Bay Area Innovation. Creativity and Bay Area Innovation. And last time we looked at the energetics of the Bay Area through the lens of Feng Shui. Feng Shui meaning wind and water, and being an ancient system of understanding the effects of the things that we can't see on the world that we can see. In the same way that the wind that we can't see leaves its effects on the water it moves over in the form of ripples and waves and so forth. And today we're going to look more at the human element, what I want to call the great cultural mashup. And, the Bay Area is one of the most diverse places on the planet. And not only is it one of the most diverse places on the planet, it's also a place where people from all walks of life are not only cohabitating and around one another, but they're actually interacting with one another too on a daily basis, as though it's the way it should be, okay? As though it's the way that it should be. And in my heart of hearts, I do believe that is the way that should be. That people, on one hand, all of us have our individual experiences, right? We all have our, the families that we grew up with, the different customs and traditions we had, maybe religious influences, maybe even economic experiences that we were going under, all sorts of different things. And yet we're also part of a collective, and all this constant interaction. And so here in the Bay Area, it's kind of remarkable just in terms of the collision of all these different types of people, and the sorts of place that this has created. Here's a fact. So first off, the native population here, the indigenous that lived here in the Bay Area, supposedly there was a group as large, if not larger, than occupied what is present-day Mexico City. So it was a huge population of the Native Americans, and really very little is known about what they actually did around here. At least it's not as well known as it's been studied down there, but I mean there's a huge inhabitant. For example, Alcatraz Island, which is now was home to the first super prison, was once a really sacred ground, right? A sacred ground where the indigenous would go out and sort of make offerings to the Golden Gate. And you could just imagine that, like this majestic opening, this mouth between the bay and the largest ocean in the world. And another interesting fact is that the first non-native person to be born in the Bay Area was Mexican-Irish. Mexican-Irish, a combination of two very different heritages, but producing this young little girl. I don't remember her name, but just I love that idea that the first person born in San Francisco, which was called Yerba Buena at the time, was a little beautiful Mexican-Irish little girl. So let's go way back, though. Let's go way back and look at this mashup and, what really fascinates me. If we go back to the beginnings of civilization, we can sort of start seeing things around Egypt and, of course, around Mesopotamia, the Tigris and Euphrates. That region, which is sort of known right now as, Africa and the Middle East, right? If we start and saying that was the beginnings of civilization in there, and we go to the east, into Asia, I guess in this way, to the east into Asia, right? Or we go west into Europe and then into eventually North America. People who went way east, of course, ended up in North America and South America. But if we do that, what we'll notice is that we'll come in within 15 degrees of latitude in the Bay Area from the exact opposite side of the world. So imagine that we have the Tigris and Euphrates in Mesopotamia is the beginnings of civilization. If we go all the way around the world, we come almost perfectly to the other side within 15 degrees of that original point, which is the Bay Area. And that is what the Bay Area is today. It's the westernmost expression of Western culture and the easternmost expression of Eastern culture, which is known as the Pacific Rim. And, I can't tell you how much of an influence that's had on my life. For example, I'm a practicing Vajrayana Buddhist, which is a type of Buddhism that came over from Tibet. And some of the early Buddhist teachers, they came to the Bay Area, Suzuki Roshi, Chogyam Trungpa, and talked about these particular things. Suzuki Roshi actually was a Zen practitioner. But that influence came over here, and it was widely accepted in the Bay Area. Why? Because there's already a robust Asian culture here. And not only that, we had people who were, I mean, think of the United States in general. A lot of them came to the West Coast first, fleeing persecution, wanting more freedoms. And then not only did they start to move out from there, but maybe there wasn't enough freedom over there. They all came over here and ended up at the farthest place possible, which is the West Coast. And so again, a lot of were brought over here by the gold rush, the 1849 gold rush. That was a big boom time for San Francisco, the Bay Area, and California in general, and it really kind of put it on the map. But the whole point of this is that the Bay Area is constantly a place for intermixing. You know, at one point it was inhabited by Native Americans, right? And really, they weren't even Americans at that point. They were just indigenous folk. And then for a while, it was occupied or owned by Spain. And then there's a short stint where it was owned by Mexico. And now, of course, it's part of the United States. So it's had this rich history. The point of that, from the point of view of creativity, is that, again, creativity thrives on cross-pollination, right? All of us are not only creators on the one hand, but we're also creatures of habit. It's easy us to get stuck in our own limiting worldviews and worn out beliefs. And the thing is that sometimes we don't even notice it. But by walking out just out in the street, we can start to, especially in a place like Berkeley or the Bay Area, and interacting with people from different walks of life, we can have a real sense of, one, the difference between humans, right, in terms of skin color, eye color, facial features, stature, things of that sort. But behind all that, we see people's humanity and their creativity, right? And this has been a place where that's been celebrated, kind of since the beginning. I mean, I guess the beginning of at least, the modern Bay Area was fraught with a lot of scandal, fraught with a lot of, people coming out and they were getting their dreams. The gold rush was a kind of a breakneck and pretty raw and almost scary time where people like trying to live out their dreams, like abandoning everything, coming out of the Bay Area. But from that sense of like, hey, how can we build upon our dreams? We've just had all kinds of people, come together in really interesting ways. My wife, for example, is half Filipino, so I have 2/4 Filipino daughters. When I'm walking out there, and I'm always interested in knowing what people's heritage is, and I never want to offend anybody. But one of the first questions I see, when I ask somebody, I always ask them, "What is your heritage?" Because I'm endlessly fascinated where people come from, right? What they're all about, and getting in conversations by which I can start to understand the world better through the eyes of somebody who's different from me. I mean, everybody's different from me. Just the other day, I went to go get my car smogged, and I was interacting with this gentleman. He was a bit kind of, gruff at first. He didn't really, it was a cold day. It was right around the holidays. I could tell he wasn't really enjoying his work. As I went to go pay for my smog, laying out there on the book was a book on spirituality and non-duality. And I said, "Oh, you're interested in non-dual systems." And non-dual systems are basically spiritual traditions that try to combine the best of spiritual insight, that bigness, that aliveness, that awareness, with being in the world, like fully being in the world, having businesses, families, and things of that sort. And so just on that, we struck up on a conversation. And he was from Lebanon. His name was Mohammed. And we just started talking about, what you can take from systems, that are helpful, and what you have to cast away, right? You can't just take everything and say, this is great. You have to chew on it and say, does that actually work with my life? And that is also part of the creative process. At the end of it, I said, "Hey, I got a copy of a book that, I'd love to give to you." I actually had a copy of the Shoreline of Wonder, and I wrote my name on it and handed it off to him. And I was in my car at that point with the window rolled down, and he just reached into the car and gave me a hug. He's like, "Oh, I'll certainly read this." And it was interesting because, he's only like 3 blocks away from my house. I'm like, "I'll come over here and we'll go talk about that." So, that sort of diversity I love. Just learning to know people from different parts of the world, hearing what their stories are, and again, hearing their differences, but also hearing the common humanity and the desire to create, the desire to connect with the world and affect it in the meaningful way that exists in all of us and all of us. So, what I'd love from you right now is to let us know, what are sorts of people that have been very different from you, either ideologically, racially, religiously, that have had profound effects on your own understanding of the world. Again, having this natural cross-pollination with a person that you didn't know very well at first, or maybe even suspicious of when you first met them. I'd love to hear about that. If you could leave that in the comment section below that would be really helpful to me and helpful to our community. It's just, I can't tell you how many times I've had preconceived notions about how a person is, going into there, and then interacting with them and seeing that this person just has an incredible gift for me. And that's one of the things that I think being a creator, that we do, is that our curiosity and our desire to solve creative conundrums allows us to go past the fear that we might have towards an other that's either different gender, different race, different sexual orientation, different religious belief structure. The more we start to interact, again, we'll see those differences, but we'll also see the similarities, okay? So, if you're not on my website right now, please go to www.austinhillshaw.com. Please read the blog below this, because it's got all kinds of interesting information that I haven't covered in this on the great cultural mashup. And please, if you like this, what you've seen here, like it, share it with others. I'm always interested in giving this information out to as many people as I can, because I believe it's nourishing, and you can help me do that. So I'm very grateful for all the sharing that you've done already and for all the sharing that you're going to do in the future. And again, this is Austin Hill Shaw, founder of Creativity Matters and author of The Shoreline of Wonder, reminding you to connect deeply, to make a difference, and to inspire creativity in others. Thank you so much for joining me.